weapons and supplies, but you need a place to track your stuff, cause you're so disorganized. You click open the web page, you heard about a critical role, and now you're ready to kick some butt in that mine shot full of no's. It's D&D, D&D Beyond, yeah, D&D, D&D Beyond. You got your stats, you got your swords, and you got your invisible wall. It's D&D, D&D Beyond.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Todd Talks. I am joined by an amazing panel with Hannah Rose, Bill Benham, and also Dr. B, because I'm a coward. I'm not going to say his last name. And we're talking about Gardens of the Fog, and this is an adventure very specific for a very specific reason. Hannah, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Gardens of Fog is an adventure created specifically for Take This to address the issues of mental health through the lens of an adventure. So, without spoiling anything, the adventurers must delve into the mind of someone who is suffering from mental illness that has been exacerbated by a malevolent force and confront the issues that both the person is facing and possibly their own anxieties as well.
Okay, how does one approach this sort of adventure, all of you? Like this, I mean, this is not like, I mean, I'm not saying that regular adventures are difficult to write, but there needs to be a certain level of respect when writing this particular adventure and addressing these certain issues. How did you all come together to deal with this, to make an adventure like this?
We got to give. I think we got to give some thanks to Greg Tito for putting us all in contact. He specifically recommended Bill to help write this because Bill has oodles of writing, Dungeons and Dragons experience and some mental health experience, and I have oodles of mental health experience and some D&D experience, often incorporating that. So it seemed like a good pairing. To put us together in the same room to use a clinical lens to inform the D&D writing.
All right, and Bill,
which is something I've never done before, but it was a fantastic experience. It's in my past life before I joined the Wizards team, I worked as an EMT and then as an occupational therapy tech with the United States Army. I spent some time with the VA. I used to go to PTSD camp, and I kind of tried to channel those experiences to say, how can we create something that's kind of fun and engaging that people will want to, like, people can internalize and participate with and have fun with, but still, like you just said, be respectful of the source material. And I'm really thankful for, like, Dr. B, his ability to, like, both understand D&D and mental health and help kind of blend those two things together. And of course, Hannah's editing skills and subject matter expertise. Like, this is a great group of people to work with. It was really fantastic.
where can people find Gardens in the Fog? Or Gardens of the Fog?
Gardens of Fog, which will be available on DM's Guild starting tomorrow. So Take This, and I'm sure all of us individually and D&D will be posting links.
Okay, and for yourselves, because everyone here has Dungeon Mastered before, have you ever tried to tackle mental illness in your own games, whether they were live streamed or home games, to a certain degree?
So I've definitely heard from Dr. B and others that without being professionals, tackling that directly can be very difficult and possibly harmful. Dr. B, do you want to speak to that? Your recommendations for people?
Well, I don't mean like trying to help someone in game necessarily, but talking about mental illness in the game, right? Like I've never tried to perform therapy via running a D&D game, because I don't
Thank you.
I gotta do myself first of all. I don't want to like wreck someone else. Like I'm not gonna start treating people left and right through dungeon mastering them. But like using mental illness in a story, has that been common for anyone? And how have you tackled it before?
Well, we certainly have incorporated bits of that over when we live stream on Clinical Role.
Right.
But then again, we're all mental health professionals and we're all familiar enough with how different aspects of different diagnoses present to be able to do that. I've seen other people try and run mental health scenarios, and unfortunately, and this is where the mission of Take This comes in, to educate people on what mental illness is and isn't. A lot of the times when they do it, it's in this very stereotypical, those with mental illness are violent, which is not true, kind of way that becomes this troped hodgepodge of different symptoms. And
Right.
it's really tricky to run that respectfully.
Well, probably the first step would not be making one of those people the villain. Would probably be a
Please.
step in the right
Nope.
direction. So probably don't make people with mental illness the villain of your campaign, or at all in any kind of D&D scenario would be probably the right step. How about for you, Bill?
Like, to tie into what you just said about not making the person suffering from mental illness the villain, I think another trope that gets overused quite a bit is like the diabolical psychiatrist. Like whether it's in like whether it's Scarecrow from Batman, is that the one that developed the thing and it made you see
he's
the things?
one of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Scarecrow does it, and there's also why am I forgetting his name?
I don't know.
Round glasses, goatee. Anyways, yeah, lots of cases
Are you
of
talking
that.
about yourself?
No. How dare you say
I
Oh,
kid.
you're talking about Hugo Strange?
Yeah, Hugo Strange. Yeah.
Yeah, the other Doctor Strange.
Yeah. But not so
Not
nice Doctor
acquainted,
Strange.
but it kind of it deepens the kind of mistrust of healthcare professionals, which is not necessarily a good thing.
The exact
And
opposite of what we want to do.
exactly,
Right.
and it's still it kind of it increases the stigmatization of folks that want to seek out treatment, which I wholeheartedly encourage folks to do. The whole point of this adventure is to help lower the barrier, lower the amount of stigma that folks face in kind of talking about and addressing mental health issues. It should be a lot easier to access care than it is, which is way beyond the scope of the adventure. But part of that starts with society being accepting of it and saying, you know what, anxiety, depression, PTSD, whatever the mental health condition might be, that's just as valid as if someone has a broken arm or the flu or what have you. It's still something that you need. Uh, Sometimes you need
Well,
medical help to address.
you say that the difficulty of accessing care is beyond the scope of the adventure, but I actually think it's in there a little bit, or it can make players think about, because the person who is suffering from mental illness in this adventure gets lucky in the fact that there is someone on hand to help them, an expert, as well as the adventurers who then come in and help them save themselves, and help them defeat this malevolent force. So it, at least for me, makes me think about, what other people could there be in this game world who aren't getting the help they need.
That is a fantastic point.
Well,
And
and I
if
know
you,
part of
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so I know one of the things we all discussed in building this module is the idea that we wanted the mental health struggles to be represented in the form of just an ordinary person, because the idea that these sort of conditions afflict, well, I mean, statistically, 1 out of 2 people in the United States in their lifetime. So one thing I like to tell people is, if you don't know somebody suffering from a mental illness, yeah, you do, and they're just not talking about it. And we wanted that to come out in this adventure, that this is not due to extraordinary circumstances. These are commonplace.
And that the players, the psychomancer and the party, don't fix the person. they're there to provide support, assistance, but not as a like you can't just. We really wanted to make sure that the message that didn't come out of this was like, oh well, you can just jump in there and fix someone mentally. It's fine, and
Yay, they're
that's
better.
not
We're
you can't.
done.
Yeah, that would
Hooray!
be my immediate concern, is where everything is, happy and go lucky at the end of the adventure, or like any TV show where everything's fine after the 20
Yep.
minutes is over. Oh, look, we solved it. we made him better again, and now everything's going to be fine. Yeah, like that's a ongoing issue. Not a. But, I mean, completely correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there were many mental illnesses are just something you have to live with and manage. It's not something that should be approached as like, okay, I've cured this thing, right?
That is correct.
100%.
And the statistics are that 94% of people who are diagnosed with a mental illness will go on and just live a life that is fulfilling. It's really the vast minority, or the small minority of people who are so debilitated by their mental illness that they truly can't live a life. And I know the way that we deliberately wrote this module is to emphasize the idea that we all have existing vulnerabilities. And really, the goal is to shore up those vulnerabilities, because everybody can get afflicted. So, yes, taking the word cure out of it.
In fact, there were
Why-
a lot of words. Oh, one sec, but there were a lot of words that we tried to take out, right? One of the things that I think we all, even Dr. B, like learned and reminded us, and things we are careful with, is getting rid of words like insane or crazy, which really permeate our everyday life. And this adventure made me a lot more aware of that, and trying to be careful of them.
Yeah, those are adjectives I use almost on a daily basis, and I am like working to not use them. to like maybe perhaps describe one's life as chaotic would be a better
Yes.
way. But yeah,
How do I describe how busy my weekend was?
yeah. But like there are more appropriate ways. Chaos is a lot kinder and nicer thing to say than saying something is crazy or insane. And if you're saying it in real life, that's probably going to carry over into your dungeon mastering and what you're writing as well. And often not very appreciated by everyone else around you. So, Bill, and all of you, why is this such a passion project?
I think for me, it stems from my military service and the work I did immediately following the military, working in addiction and recovery, and seeing how prevalent mental illness is, and how I've already talked about stigma, but not only stigma, but the how that leads to the fear of folks speaking up and speaking with their the folks that they care about to receive the support that they need to kind of go on their healing journey. I mean, I'm fairly open about the fact that I myself, I have anxiety, I suffer from depression, PTSD. I take medication, I go to counseling, and it's just it's what I've accrued through my life, and it's part of who I am, and it doesn't make me a bad person, but it means that there's work that I have to do there, and I like to try and engage the people that are close to me in that in a healthy way, and that's I think that's why this adventure is important to me, because it's about bringing folks together and not having the mental health journey looked down upon, or is a this big dark black hole or something. It's like it's not all negative, to focus on the healing aspect of the experience.
And I might add also to that, like it's not. I feel like people look at mental illness as an unnatural thing, like that's not normal. Even
And
though
that
you
was
may have like pre-existing conditions that are like you just genetically are prone to this particular thing, or if you have something happening in your life, you are very likely the only way that you are going to cope is by having what people say like is a mental illness. Like if you have a traumatic event, of course you're going to have PTSD. Like, how would you not? Like, often I would say a lot of people, it would be strange for someone not to have that reaction later on if they have like a grossly traumatic event. But that's entirely my opinion, and I am not a doctor, so I could be completely wrong on that point. But that's my experience, is that people look at it as like this bad thing that you have, not something that can be lived with.
Well, and
I think
that's
that's
something we. Oh, please.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, that's something that we want to make. We really tried to make apparent in this that it's ordinary, it's common, that trauma is an injury. That is, you put it, Todd, we all have certain genetic vulnerabilities that are exacerbated by our environmental stresses. We all have a breaking point. And again, with 1 in 2 people going to be diagnosed in the United States over their lifetime with a full-on mental health diagnosis, it is exceedingly common. And that actually leads me more directly into your question of why is this important to me? Well, aside from the fact that it's my career, I grew up in a family that I've lost count of how many people were diagnosed with bipolar disorder. My father has complex PTSD for a variety of reasons. I struggle with autism. I'm really open about that, and the subsequent social anxiety that often goes along with that, as well as attention problems. And so it's just really important to me that people realize that you can be successful while still struggling with a mental illness, just like any other health condition.
And for you, Hannah?
I mean, I think some of my experience from this adventure comes from just being in therapy for 21 years, right? Like, I have done a lot of work for myself and really struggled, especially throughout certain periods of my life. And one thing I really like about just the fact that we've done this adventure is it frames confronting anxieties and fears and things that drag us down into depression as part of the game and the struggles that people in game are facing. And to me, that makes it more palatable to think about really putting in that hard work in real life. It kind of is an example of the tangible rewards of doing that, because it can be, at least for me, really hard to see, okay, if I put in the work, if I spend time on this, if I force myself to think more positively, what are going to be the benefits of that in my life?
Ryan, that's something that's a good thing to get across to people as well. Like, it's work. Like, this is something you do every day. This is something you manage every day. I suffer from panic attacks and anxiety disorder for various reasons, and for me, I can say, and I am not a doctor, it's like a wound. I can be fine for a very long time and feel completely what I would call normal, like I used to be. But if I have an attack, I will be more prone to have another attack later that day, and then the day after, and then I will have to spend months safeguarding myself from trying to like have an attack without altering my day to day. I still have to do my job. I still have to go outside, interact with people, and I found personally for myself, anytime I am terrified that I will adjust my personality and what I do based on this illness that I have. And before that, I was terrified I would lose my entire career. And I don't think if it's 1 in 2 people, definitely almost no one's talking about it. I think people are a lot more accepting on social media now, and I think people are a lot more upfront about PTSD and depression and anxiety, and that's helping.
It's also a fine line to walk, right? We're all being super open about this and all being professionals, but I actually was just talking with someone the other week about how it's a fine line to walk between being open with the issues you're having, but also, if you're on your main professional account, you, from a business perspective, need to be positive and self-promote in terms of not saying, oh, nobody likes my work, I feel terrible about it, right? Because that's not going to make anyone want to support you at your work. And that's really hard, but for me, it's also been actually really helpful because it, at the very least, gives me an excuse, if not forces me to think about and frame things in a positive way, and do that self promotion that I might not always do otherwise.
Yeah, it's a social media. This is something I've been talking about a lot with my wife lately. It's a difficult thing because I think it's exceptionally important for everyone to be honest about how they're feeling. But sometimes there are other people that can get actually. I worry about what I put out on social media and what I put out into the world. And if I'm constantly talking about anxiety or fears I'm having, I feel like I'm worried about someone else who may be suffering, who maybe is being overwhelmed by the things I am also tweeting. Like saying it once in a while, I think is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But if I make my entire social account about that, then I feel like maybe I'm actually making whoever's following me have a harder time because we don't have a lot of positivity on social media, to be
I mean,
honest.
Todd, I feel like 90% of your posts are about how much you love Megan, so I think you're doing fine.
Well, they
Yeah.
because 90%, like, because 100% of me does, and that's mainly what I think about. I am very lucky. Sorry, I hope anyone who follows me on social media isn't sick of me talking about my wife. So, I apologize. It's not
If
going to
she's in the
stop.
chat, you just earned major brownie points.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now I'm
she's in the
blushing. So
chat.
I don't know. Okay, good. Right. Well, I love you. No, and I mean, that's one of the lovely things about this is, I'll be very frank. I was terrified to meet my wife. Before we had started chatting, and we finally met in person. I was overwhelmingly horrified at the idea I might have an anxiety attack when I met her. I did not want her to see that, and the amount of I was so excited to meet her for the first time, it actually overwhelmed it. And if there was any moment in my life I would have had a panic attack, it would have been that moment from the pure adrenaline. But I was very lucky, and I didn't have a problem. So let's talk about someone else though. So I don't like. Yeah. So specifically, take this.org. How does this organization help people?
Well, oh, God, in so many
Sorry,
ways.
switching the gears. You're on. Now
no, mushy
all on you
stuff.
now.
Baseball, D&D.
I don't play baseball.
So take this was the first mental health organization to serve the game industry specifically, and what we're best known for is our very public-facing mental health rooms that are run at the PAX events and E3, our AFK rooms, which have become a very routine part of people's convention experiences. The feedback we
Please,
get
can
on
we
those
get
is,
these at D&D Live next year?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm happy to try and make that happen if y'all want us there. But we also do a lot of really great other stuff behind the scenes with the industry. In fact, in 3 days, we're releasing a 60-page white paper on the complete mental health state of the game industry. That is, as far as I'm aware, nothing like that has been done before. We work with game studios directly on mental health representation in games. We offer trainings to them on mental health policies and procedures. God, what else do? We do a lot. I've lost track of it all. But we provide at the core, the TLDR version is Take This provides mental health resources and education to people. We tell them what mental illness is, what it isn't. And we normalize the fact that you can have significant challenges without it being a mental illness, and mental illnesses are common. We do a lot of public speaking too. Oh God, do we do a lot of public speaking?
Like right now.
Oh yeah, and plus our Take This ambassador program, our streaming ambassador program, where we have currently 11 amazing ambassadors who actively promote mental wellness and acceptance within their streams, and not just in sort of a passive mental health is cool kind of way. These are people who are so active about it. And you, God, I'm probably forgetting something we do because we really do a lot.
We will judge you for it. when you forget. Like when we find out what that thing you forgot is. The AFK rooms, I mean, Hannah brings up a very good point, are exceedingly important at cons because I am certainly not the social butterfly I once was, but when you're surrounded by that many people, which is just not normally
Especially at
an
cons like
environment.
PAX.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
PAX is so packed. You're having so much social interaction, and it is amazing to like run into all these people that you have uh, a shared fandom with. But it does get overwhelming very quickly, and I do know that I have known so many people who will buy tickets to these events, go to them, and then hide in their hotel room because it's too much, and they don't feel like they think there's something wrong with them. When it's most of us. Our natural state is not to hang out with 70,000 people all at once. Like it's just not. I mean, for some people it is. It's strangely it's increasingly mine, but that's a lot. It's a lot to take in. And it can be incredibly stressful. So I know that people have taken advantage of the AFK rooms multiple times, and that has allowed people to enjoy those conventions when otherwise they would not have. So if you're at con and you see that, you should definitely check it out. It's really important stuff. And also the Descent. I will say the Descent D&D Live should probably have one of those rooms. And that was very tight. Yeah, an intense experience. And a very good experience. But yeah, I could see the benefits of that. Has anyone here ever, and this is a very touchy thing to do, and I can see why you would recommend someone not do it, ever role played mental illness or actually role played maybe in the other direction with a character to help give you a break about thinking about it? Do you know what I mean?
Sorry, could you clarify that last part?
Well, has anyone here ever role played a character that also had maybe a mental illness that they themselves had, or instead played a character completely the opposite to give themselves a break from themselves? Is there therapy in that to like not? And I know the answer for myself. Is there therapy in not being who you are for a set amount of time?
Escapism? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've ever set out to make a character and said, I want this character to embody the characteristics of not having depression, or I want this
Right.
character to be struggling with complex PTSD, so I can confront that. But I've noticed that a lot of my characters are very determined and want to see things through to the end, which is, of course, a great characteristic for a D&D character to have because it advances the plot. But also, that's something that, for me, is, I guess, a little bit of escapism or maybe aspirational because I always worry that I'm going to give up on something and I'm not going to be able to see something through. So to have my characters do that is really satisfying.
How about for you, Belle? I've never played D&D with you. I don't know. It seems like we need to fix this.
That, Todd.
Yeah.
No, I tend to. I don't think I've ever gone the kind of the like I've ever said, you know what, I'm going to create this Tabaxi monk, and they're definitely not going to have depression. Like that hasn't been a thing.
Right.
But
It is a
I think
weird
with
thing
some
to
of the
think.
characters, like I have used that for various characters, like as a way to kind of guide how they view the world using like my own experiences or the experiences of someone I've known to say, oh, well, they're gonna their behavior pattern is gonna follow this because it's informed by these experiences and this is how they've
Right.
coped with it. So this is how they're gonna present themselves. But yeah, I would say that's how I think that's how it's informed my my role playing activities so far.
Is there as storytellers, is there something where you've specifically dealt with any of these, like not just in the adventure that you just wrote, and can you give me like a better idea what the plot line is, actually, first what the plot line is for this particular module that is going to be on sale on the DM's Guild? And also, I'd love to know more about the Psychomancer.
Yeah,
I don't
let's
know
talk about the
anything about
Psychomancer because we have not
I would
talked
love
about
to
that
talk
much
about
yet.
Psychomancer.
Everyone's excited about the Psychomancer. Let's talk about that.
Bill, do you want to give a little plot summary of the adventure first? Because you really came up with that.
Yeah.
Bill's
So
excited.
yay! So the adventure. I actually am. The adventure starts with the party being summoned to a mutual friend. Is influenced, they kind of learn through the course of the adventure, being influenced by an external force that is really kind of wrecking their quality of life. Like it's something that's grown very dire, and with the aid of the Psychomancer, which you will learn more about here in a second, with the aid of the Psychomancer, the party actually enters this individual's kind of mindscape to try and help the individual confront what's going on, the force that's been kind of trying to break them down so that they can kind of continue their healing journey. Did I hit all the key beats, Dr. B? Are we there?
No, basically.
You're definitely not You're definitely not spoiling the plot line.
I would say, without too much spoilers, we could say along the way, or maybe like mute for a second if you don't want spoilers. Along the way, the party has to confront manifestations and effects of both depression and anxiety that are contributing to these difficulties. And there is a lot of role playing, especially empathetic role playing, and the importance of empathy, but also some combat. So it's not just like a 3-hour-long feels fest.
Right, and that might be
because sometimes you want to punch depression in the face. Like that's a thing that you want to do. So
yeah,
it's tempting.
That sounds great. That sounds lovely. That sounds
but you
like
just don't have the energy to do it.
Yeah, I'm right. So describe the Psychomancer to me. Like what class is it and how does it function?
Hannah, you want to take this one?
The Psychomancer is a cleric domain. We called it the Mind Domain, which I guess might have been something else in another edition. But Dr. B and I got together and brainstormed, what do we want this to be? Do we want it to be a paladin who's championing mental health, or do we want it to be a cleric who's focused on supporting and healing? And we decided that a cleric would fit best. And the Psychomancer is the mascot of Take This, of the organization. And they're this little figure with a sword and a shield. The wormwood hope boxes that you can get that support Take This, which are made out of beautiful woods, are in that little shield shape with a sword on them, right? I need to get one of those. I haven't gotten one of those yet.
Talk to me later. I got you.
No, I need to donate and get one. And we sat down and we talked about the kind of work that Take This is doing and how to make this what the lore of the Psychomancer was. So there's actually a little bit at the beginning about the lore of the first Psychomancer and how psychomancy came to be a discipline of study. What else? Do you want to talk about any of their particular powers?
Yeah, I'd like to hear some of the powers, and I expect like some of the spell list is like calm emotions and spells like that.
Well, definitely.
Yeah.
One of the things we really wanted to make sure is that I think it was Bill that brought up the idea of the malevolent psychiatrist or psychologist trope that is so often present in media. And one of the core aspects of psychomancers is their benevolence. They can't utilize their powers if they're utilizing it for selfishness or evil. They have to use their powers for good. Actually, that idea was sort of rooted in the American Psychological Association's ethics code, that beneficence and non-maleficence are aspirational goals of the American Psychological Association. Not sure I actually told either of you that, but yeah.
No, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so that was rooted in that. But yeah, some of the powers, like Hannah and I talked about, first of all, the Cleric Focus is a shield
Yes, you could have the
because
shield as your holy symbol.
Yep, that is the focus. But calm emotions is one of them. There was always at least one role playing power and one combat oriented power, and it's very support focused. And I'm pulling
One
up
of
the actual list now.
Yeah, one of the abilities that I really like is your channel divinity. You can give your allies a bonus on wisdom saving throws for the next minute. So you bolster the resilience of those around you. And you yourself, there's another ability where you yourself have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened, because of your ability to center and understand your emotions.
And
That makes a
because the purpose behind, this is essentially the D&D's version of a therapist.
right.
And so some of they need to be good communicators, so they get bonuses to things like insight. They've got the tongues spell as a standard class feature or subclass feature. It's just basically we want to create this idea that there are people who are there to help the party, and they have nothing but your party in mind as they do so.
Right. And hopefully no one plays this subclass as an evil character in the future, because the entire purpose of this is to
Yeah, they would have to stretch really hard to do that.
right. Yeah.
Well, and it's specifically written into this that if you do so, you actually lose your psychomancer powers.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so it's almost like the old school paladin, and it does have a touch of like the Oath of Redemption paladin to a degree, where there is like you have to be very specific in how you conduct yourself in order to play this type of subclass. Though I don't think there's any ramifications in D&D anymore, but it's good to have that there. Is there anything about this adventure all of you like the most, that you're very proud of, that you're most excited about, even in the shallow way? Or will that spoil it?
I want to say it's pretty well edited and proofread. We did a lot of revisions. We did a lot of passes on it.
It's to your point about being an editor, I mean, like, no one's ever like, "Ooh, there was some good editing in this." Like,
I am.
I
do.
There's some good editing in this.
But there's like it's like an unsung hero. Like, if you're doing your job, no one's gonna know you did it. They're gonna know if you didn't do it.
Your writing shine.
Yeah. How about for Bill? Editing aside,
that was my personal brag. And of course, someone's going to find a typo now, and I commend you for it.
Oh yeah.
I think it would.
It's the parts that you wrote.
Without,
right?
I don't want
Those are your favorite parts.
Yes.
That's basically all of it.
And I don't want to give too much of it away, like, in advance, but there's some of the encounters in there when folks are when they're confronting, say, the embodiment of depression or the embodiment of anxiety, like the setup for everything, like where the interaction occurs, and the kind of things that those personifications can do. I really liked how that all came together, because I wanted it to be, well, what would representative of depression or representative of anxiety, but still be something that folks can engage with and have fun, and then afterwards go, oh yeah, well, also that made sense. It wasn't just kind of a pastiche of weird things that didn't have any rhyme or reason.
Was there some level of anxiety writing all of this? Because I would be terrified of misrepresenting.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly do not know that I would be brave enough to put down on paper like the embodiment of any of those mental illnesses without feeling like I could screw up. I'm not trying to make you anxious right now. I just mean, like, that's
thanks.
like there's writing an adventure, but then there's writing an adventure that truly means something to people on a very personal level.
We had some consultants
Okay.
And that's actually, that gets to your last question, Todd. What I'm most proud about is that we had several mental health professionals consult on this. Dr. Rachel Coer, the research director at Take This, Dr. Megan Connell, who does Psych at the Table and is also the DM of Clinical Role,
Dr.
Dr. Sarah
Sarah
Hayes.
Hayes.
Yeah, our content manager at Take This, as well as Dr. Kelly Dunlap over at I Thrive Games, and all three of them really liked how all four of them really liked, because I can count, what we did with everything, and the fact that we were able to artistically represent these mental health challenges accurately and compassionately enough that my colleagues were excited about it. God, I'm proud of that.
Something
awesome.
I'm really happy about that was not intentional at all was, and that I realized when the Tales from the Miscast played through this on Saturday, and of course, God, TK DMing this, I think, gave us all chills. Like, we knew the adventure, and it was still, like, really intense and really great. But something I realized that this adventure really does is it, um, if not forces, then definitely offers a ton of roleplay possibilities for the party to have to reveal some of their secrets and fears to each other, which sometimes, you have a character that has a complex backstory, has some secrets, and you kind of want that to come out to the rest of the party, even though the character doesn't. So I think putting this in a long-term campaign where the characters have a lot of secrets and fears, that can come out to the rest of the party and provide some role playing and drama is really cool.
That's a good point. I mean, using emotions and whether positive or negative, like giving people opportunity with their characters to like discuss things and to be horrified by something or to face fears that they may have or anxieties that those characters have can be those are some of the best moments I've ever had in D&D actually. And it's a weird thing to reference. I admit referencing Rick and Morty, but one of my favorite moments in that entire cartoon is after an adventure where all this stuff exploded. It was like a Death Star explodes, and they both are just screaming inside of the ship because they did the actual fear of all those things that you've done like just all like hits you all at once. And it was like the weirdest, most realistic moment of Rick and Morty for some reason to me. Like, if you fought a dragon, I'm not gonna be like, yeah, we killed that dragon. I'm like, what? Let's never do this again. I quit. I'm done being a fighter. I'm out. I'm going back to farming. Like,
That reminded me, I did have an experience with a character where I guess trauma came into it, which is that she and her current/future love interest both died in this battle. To Ogremok, the Prince of Elemental Earth, and she had nightmares after that, and kind of some visions of thinking that he was there again and seeing him. And I think that's a really hard line to walk in D&D, because often we are like, yeah, we killed the dragon. Adventurers are kind of special people in that they keep going out and putting themselves into dangerous situations. And
right.
for a game to be fun, I don't think we want our characters to all have PTSD from the things they've seen and done.
No.
But there's also, I think it's nice to have a little bit of awareness that the things that they are facing are real and serious.
Yeah, extraordinary. I wouldn't want to make every episode of my campaign to be about things like that, but certainly like it does kind of put your characters into sharp perspective. To like find that moment is probably a good thing. There's going to be a moment in any campaign that kind of defines you as like before this and after this, right? Like it's a fun thing to explore, not a fun thing to explore every day. And in every adventure, when you really do want just an escape from feeling bad about anything. But there has to be like I feel bad for everyone in Heroes of the Veil, because I feel like I am inducing trauma to them on a weekly basis. I'm very curious, just personally. So I'm not going to be a very good interviewer. What are your favorite characters? Like, what type of characters do all of you tend to play? Because that tells me a lot about who you are.
Well, I've answered this question enough times that I'm happy to do so. My characters tend to be well, you brought this up earlier, the idea of escapism. I've struggled with autism my entire life, and for those who don't know what autism is, the short version is it's a struggle with nonverbal social communication and that sort of thing. So my characters tend to be charming and persuasive and smooth talkers who are also graceful. So rogues and monks for the most part, because I'm clumsy as all get out. The 6 years of martial arts just made it dangerous for whatever I fell on. And so my characters are fast talking, smooth, charismatic, and they can get themselves out of any social situation. They get it. But the cool thing is it taught me through role playing that I can actually do some of that stuff IRL, which was
That's
kind of a
excellent.
nice benefit.
Bill, what are your characters up to?
So most often I usually play a cleric, um, because it's like starting with like the third edition of the game is like, man, you could do anything with a cleric. Like they can do all kinds of fun stuff, and that's kind of then have continued on into fifth. So I enjoy that. I enjoy that class, and personality wise, I consciously try to mix it up, but if left to a default, it would be a. I tend to go towards kind of a cleric who's a jovial smartass. Like that's, I guess, that
You're playing
you've
yourself,
talked to me
Bill.
a
I'm
few
just
times.
letting you know right now.
That is essentially my comfort zone, the jovial smartass zone. So that's where I comfortably rest. I just changed the ancestry of the jovial smartass in question. So
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
um,
And
yeah.
Hannah, how about for you?
I think I already mentioned I really like to play characters who are determined and like to see things through to the end. I really try to mix it up and play all sorts of things in terms of race and class because I like trying different things and making different builds. Definitely more of my characters are dex based because I just find that gives me more options.
Yeah.
Mostly I like to play chaotic good or neutral good characters who are going to prioritize the I guess that the needs of themselves and their friends, but still want to do good in the world, and want to help people. I don't know. Recently, I played a character who's actually much older than I was, and she's a mom with 3 kids, which is something I never see myself as having. But she had this really strong family connection and a really strong drive to go out and fight these monsters to protect her children, even though they were, basically grown adults.
That's awesome. I've never ventured into playing a much older character. We got an interesting question. This question is I can't pronounce that, but this question is from Twitch chat, and they're wondering if you could choose any classic adventure to represent compassion to mental health. Which one would you choose? I don't have an answer for that. Because I can't come up with a classic adventure in D&D right now. But I feel like there are a lot of monsters that are manifestations that can easily kind of be slotted. Like I've always seen as terrifying to me because of real world issues. Very specifically, mind flayers I find very upsetting. And that entire process has always been upsetting to me as a kid and an adult because I associate that with dementia, that process of losing yourself
Mhm.
or having to witness that. Are there other monsters that you feel are like very definitely embodiments of mental illness or?
I'd say beholders.
Oh yeah.
Beholders
Oh,
are like
of
Paranoia.
course.
beholders are like
That's-
paranoia, malignant narcissism. They're just like the ego, super like just run wild. Like that's
But I definitely wouldn't say that's a compassionate representation, right? I mean,
No,
beholders are
no.
super
No.
evil and
Oh,
awful.
that's true.
No, but they are literally held together by their own neuroses and arrogance.
Yeah.
But I do strangely find them like a little bit more. I have a little bit more compassion towards beholders because of that, for some reason.
Mm.
Because this creature is so fragile in my mind. Like anyone I've ever known who's like that has been a very fragile person who's covering up stuff, and I see beholders as being, though evil. I can see if I was like the most arrogant person on the planet, I'd just become a beholder. I mean, I would just, I it would be out of pure fragility. At least I hope so. I would like to think so. Though I've been wrong before. I've met people who are so arrogant that they're that to their core. How about for you, Dr. B?
Well, I'm not thinking of any one monster in particular, but I think of, although Beholder's a good one. Oh man, narcissistic personality disorder. But anything that casts illusions excessively,
Mhm.
because
Mm,
that's often an analogy that I use to describe anxiety, because fear is adaptive. Fear keeps us alive. It
right.
lets us know when there's realistic danger there. Anxiety is an illusion. And anxiety is fear gone amok. It is a false representation of fear. And so that's why I just really like illusion casters as an analogy for anxiety. And it's something that seems to help people understand it a little bit better.
The hallucinatory terrain spell, stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Phantasmal killer. That all of that is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
actually struggling with a character right now, and I'm like, ooh, but that's such an insidious, evil spell. And people talk about how evil necromancers are, but like phantasmal, it's phantasmal
Phantasmal
killer
Force.
phantasmal
I
force.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, ooh, that is like the darkest spell in D&D. I would argue. You were like, and modify memory, right? You're getting
Yeah.
into like some
Yeah.
really any of the enchantment stuff. Charm person makes me uncomfortable. Suggestion makes me uncomfortable. Command. These are all like really creepy things to do. I think that was like a very good example of, and what hit home with me was the Marvel show on Netflix, Jessica Jones
You know,
season one.
yeah.
Oh my god, one example that an enchanter is just pure evil,
Oh
like the
my
most
God.
evil thing.
Yeah.
A necromancer is just like bringing things back to life and using them. An enchanter is like, it's really insidious, really manipulative. That's
Necromancy is
my
just
opinion.
environmentalism. That's recycling.
that's
Composting. Yeah.
that's how I feel about it. We have another question: is using spells like someone just brought up what I said? Is using spells like dominate person, charm person, or cause fear on a player counterproductive for an adventure about mental health? Yeah, I kind of feel that feels a little close to home. If you're trying to run an adventure about mental health and then you are forcing the players into a situation, I don't like even using those spells on player characters as it is. It makes me personally uncomfortable. I don't. I think. Yeah,
I
that's
think
my
there are
bias, though. I just don't like those spells.
I think there are ways you could do it where it might be okay, right? Like the
R-
monster casts, cause fear and the players have to work through it.
Right.
But maybe if you have a mechanic where they can, role play to give each other advantage on the saving throws, or even automatically succeed on a save through good role playing and confronting those
Mm,
fears.
like taking the
Uh,
help action to help someone with their saving
yeah,
throw.
yeah, the
Right.
help
Like,
action is good. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. That
Well,
makes me
and
feel a lot more comfortable.
Hannah and I talked about this as we were building the Psychomancer character, because on the surface level, Charm Person seemed like a good fit. But for that reason, no, because if these are the therapists of the D&D world who are set out to give hope and healing and education to people, then there needs to be an overt element of consent, just like there is in any therapeutic relationship, which is, by the way, written into the story as well. and charm person, dominate person, they just take away that element of consent, even if used for ostensibly beneficial purposes. So we just kind of push those to the side. It's
Yeah.
not it's really not a nice way to use those. I don't use them either generally.
Yeah. I'm weird about a lot of things in
I just
D&D.
find that the consequences aren't worth it, right? You cast charm person, and sure, they're friendly for a little bit, and then
Right,
they
yeah.
realize that you manipulated their mind, right? Like,
Yeah, spells not to use
as
in
a
a city
player or a
campaign.
DM, yeah.
All right. Sorry, we apparently lost Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh no, I thought he was just being very stoic.
no, very stoic.
Well, at least it
Exactly.
paused on a nice smiling face.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
that's
a great face.
that's just Bill's default. That's just he's always nice and smiley. So it's an interesting point because yeah, we do have a lot of monsters that kind of like embody, maybe inappropriately so sometimes, monsters. But are there monsters that are actually like do you see as like the most mentally beneficial that exist? And when I say monsters, just creatures that are in the monster manual that maybe are like just kind of rife with being like support creatures. Like I think flumps are like a nice example. Very
First thing that came
supportive.
to mind. Well, and also they react to good.
Right.
You know, they have they have negative reactions against selfish, evil thoughts, and they're just absolutely wonderful in that respect. And don't they react positively to acts of compassion and empathy, as So, God, yeah, first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of research into this question. That was the only like I said, they even changed their color based off of yeah, we're not getting Bill back. His laptop
Oh
died. So
no.
sad. Well, this has been like a fantastic talk. I feel like we should have probably talked for like 2 hours instead. I actually realized I've not ever played D&D with any of you, so we need
We
to
need
like fix that.
yeah.
So everyone needs to come over and we'll play D&D. 'Cause
Happily.
I feel like
Yeah.
you get to know people so much better once you played a session of D&D with people. And then maybe I'm wrong because no one's playing themselves, but I'm always fascinated by the characters they play. So yeah, Hannah Rose, thank you so much, and thank you so much for editing this amazing adventure. This is like a really important thing. And I think I would love to see more adventures like this out there. I think there's
Maybe
like
someday
this.
we can do a sequel.
I would
We've
love.
already talked about it, the idea of doing another one, but oh man, so much work.
Well, it would also, I think, be worth it to have something like Uncaged. Uncaged Anthology is very good about taking myths that have been largely toxic and deconstructing them. And to see something like that for mental health, I think would be fascinating. Maybe we do take creatures like beholders and stuff like that, things that are the embodiment of what is largely viewed as mental illness, and maybe humanizing them, or
Yeah.
maybe finding like a way for them not to be what they are might be fascinating. I'm just throwing that out there, or maybe I should keep
Oh,
my mouth
I
shut.
like the idea of defeating beholders through empathy.
Yeah, I mean, what happens when I actually had an adventure where beholder was terrified because it became good, and it became so good that it eventually couldn't be like the self, like
Beholder?
it's completely, yeah, in a sense it stopped being able to float. Actually, it lost its magic because it became good. And that was kind of the plot line of that adventure. So
I like it.
it'd be interesting to be able to defeat monsters through literally changing their perspective or healing them in a way. But yeah, anyways, I will stop jabbering. Thank you everyone for being here for Todd Talks. I'm so sad. It feels like that giant empty space in my screen
I
that there's no
know.
Bill Benham. There's one less smiling face. Thank you, Hannah Rose. Thank you, Dr. B, for making this adventure. I'm really excited. That's coming out in the DMs Guild tomorrow, correct?
Tomorrow.
Awesome. All right. Everyone go check
And
that
we
out.
should
What is the
say,
name of
because I
it?
don't think we've said it yet, it's called Gardens of Fog, and all proceeds will be going to benefit Take This.
That
So
is fun.
great way to grab this adventure and support the organization.
Do some good and have a fun adventure.
Yeah.
Always a good
And
thing.
the Psychomancer is included in the adventure.
All right.
Yay,
Awesome.
you can be a psychomancer.
I'm excited to check it out tomorrow. All right, thank you so much. I will see you
Thank
guys
you,
later.
Todd.
Bye.